Well, it was exactly a week ago, wasn't it, when the former President Jacob Zuma announced on the eve of the start of the ANC's national conference that he intended to begin private prosecution proceedings against the incumbent Cyril Ramaphosa. He says that was because Ramaphosa failed to act or aided in a way abuse that Zuma claims to have suffered basically through the lead prosecutor in his corruption matter. That's Billy Downer. Zuma's already having Downer prosecuted through a private prosecution means, accusing him of having leaked medical records to Karen Moore, the journalist. They both have said that they've done nothing wrong. Let's talk about what's happened in the last few days. We're joined by Advocate Thuli Madonsela, Director and Chair for Social Justice at Stellenbosch University. Prof, a very good evening to you. I'm grateful for your time. So it's been a week since these letters have been flying back and forth. The one from the Jacob Zuma Foundation, a response from President Ramaphosa's office, the state attorney, and now the NPA has come up to say that, in fact, it did not issue a blanket certificate, especially not one that would extend to a private prosecution of President Ramaphosa. Does that mean former President Zuma's case is basically dead in the water?
It does appear so, but it really appeared dead in the water, to use your language. At the very beginning, I think that the former president risks being declared a vexatious litigant, just somebody who harasses people for the sake of harassing and embarrassing them, because there's no chance that when these summonses were issued, anybody really expected them to succeed. There's just no chance in any country that you could turn an administrative law matter into a criminal matter. But secondly, that you could criminalize a person for not doing what would be criminal to do.
And when you say what would be criminal to do, that's to do with, as Mzwanele Manyi explained it to me a week ago, they basically wanted President Cyril Ramaphosa to intervene at some level in what they say was the alleged violation of President Zuma's rights by the lead prosecutor in this corruption matter, Advocate Billy Downer. Who would have been better seized with that responsibility?
Well, not even the Minister of Justice, to whom the NPA reports in terms of policy, has the power to get involved. But we do know now that the President referred the request to the Minister of Justice. The NPA is constitutionally required to be independent. If anybody is unhappy with how the prosecution chooses who's going to prosecute whoever, there's a legal process for that, and it doesn't involve asking a politician and certainly a member of the executive to interfere.
If it's that cut and dried, Professor, why has the state prosecutor granted these extensions to the Zuma camp instead of just allowing it to go to court and have what would be, it seems, according to what you're telling us now, as someone familiar with the law, an easy victory?
Well, it is not, I think, the prosecution that has granted an extension. I think it is the Zuma camp that has granted the extension. You will recall that it's not the NPA that is prosecuting, it's the private prosecution. The normal sequence of events, if you want to prosecute somebody, is you report a matter to the police and you indicate exactly who the suspect is, or the police themselves discover who the suspect is. Then the police refer the docket to the NPA, and then the NPA may decide whether to prosecute or not to prosecute. But they have to know who is supposed to be prosecuted. Mr. Manyi suggests that the president was mentioned. He wasn't mentioned as a suspect. In passing, the document which you have seen on Twitter, simply says the matter was reported to him around August last year, and he immediately told them that he's referred it to the Minister of Justice, to which they didn't object. And therefore there's no chance that at any given stage there was an indication that the president would be a suspect in this. But I must just say that it does appear to me to be vexatious litigation that is only calculated to harass and to embarrass.
And I was referring just there, coming to that question, to the state attorney, which had given the former President's foundation until Wednesday to withdraw the summons. He has now said in the foundation's latest statement that the NPA is trying to basically play judge in interpreting its own certificate. But whose job is it to interpret the certificate if not the body which issued the document?
Well, ideally, it has to be the NPA, but I do accept the argument by the foundation on the other side is that once the certificate has been accepted in court by the registrar, whoever gave them a date, it's now a matter of the courts, which says to me that there's a loophole here. Whoever placed this matter on the roll should have read this matter properly. So I don't see the president ever appearing in a court of law, but he can't just randomly not appear because we are a rule of law country. And therefore, that's why he's asked them to withdraw. And if they don't withdraw, he will then have to approach a court of law to dispose of these summonses and then ask them to pay the cost. But if I were him, I would ask for more than the cost. I would ask for the attorney who drafted the summonses to be held accountable for vexatious litigation.
And what would be relied upon in law to make such a request, to hold the attorney responsible or accountable for the issuing of the summons, Prof?
Well, there is a provision. Well, in other countries, there's a provision that makes vexatious litigation a crime. But in our country, it is a civil matter that the president can hold them accountable for and ask for costs based on the vexatious litigation, because any reasonable lawyer, including a first-year law student, would have known that, number one, you can't be criminalized for not doing what you are legally prohibited from doing. But number two, even if the president was required to do this, this is not a matter of the criminal justice system. It would have been a matter of the administrative law system.
I wonder if you care to respond, because since the last time I think you were with us here on Newzroom Afrika, just after we'd learned of these proceedings or looming proceedings, not quite sure how to phrase them, given the fact that it's indeed a private prosecution is itself under discussion or being debated. But people have said that, for instance, you as Professor Madonsela are basically aiding the president in this because you're not a fan of former President Jacob Zuma, and that your legal analysis and interpretation has been biased on that level. Is that something you care to respond to tonight?
Yes, thank you for giving me an opportunity. I'm giving my opinion in an unbiased manner. And of course, if I'm wrong as an academic, a court of law would so decide. So far, I've been correct in many of the things that I have said. And just talking about this matter, it's not just the president who's being harassed. Karen Moon is also being harassed, and I do think that a court of law will vindicate her, because I don't know if you recall, I mean, you're very young, but some many years ago when I was still public protector, there was an attempt by government to criminalize the work of journalists whenever they deal with documents that have been leaked to them. And we all as a country fought against that. So if we're saying government cannot do that to journalists because it would have a chilling effect and would undermine the freedom of the media, why should private persons have that power and have that power unregulated to harass journalists? So it's not just about the president. It's really about, if this is allowed to be done to the president or to Karen Moon, that means it can be done to you, it can be done to me, it can be done to any other random person. They can just be criminalized for being asked to do something that would be criminal to do to start with.
Advocate Thuli Madonsela, thank you for your time tonight. Enjoy the rest. Well, Professor Thuli Madonsela, thank you for your time. Enjoy the rest of your evening.